Begin transmission. It is 2024, and I'm joined by Ben for episode 135 of Outer Rim Transmission, our first episode for 2024. And we're doing things a little bit differently. We're kind of talking about Star Wars, but kind of not in an abstract way. We're kicking things off this year, mixing things up a bit. We're comparing Zack Snyder's recently released Rebel Moon with Star Wars. We're going to be diving into those details because way back when Zack Snyder originally pitched this as a Star Wars movie to Lucasfilm, and they declined, and he went his old way. And years later, Netflix said, okay, let's run with it. So yes, we have part 1 of 2 of the Rebel Moon movie, whatever you want to call it. Yes, it is a movie. So we're going to be diving into that, the differences, the things that are kind of similar to it, just contrast and compare these two things. So it should be a pretty fun show here. How's it going, Ben? How's your new year going so far?
Yeah, good. I mean, just getting back into the swing of things of working out. Had to take off the whole New Year's kickoff like everybody else with their fitness goals because I had a slight injury, but I'm gonna get back to working out tomorrow, so that's exciting to actually finally like be back and like get into it. So I have that going on, and then just had a good Christmas with everybody, and yeah, it was just a nice little. I guess we all had a holiday break, so it was a good time there, and now it's going to be fun getting back into the swing of things of our normal like routine on here, and then of course, just our weekly lives right now. I mean, it's winter time. Today was our first big snow of the year, so it's beginning. So as Jon Snow, winter is coming, but yeah, we're back.
Oh yeah. So how many inches did you get by inch?
We got like an inch just since 8 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a good amount because over here, like it's either like 45 degrees or it's like 10 degrees, and today it was like freezing and everything. So it's like, yeah, it's like winter. It's time for winter time, and we're expected to get a lot more snow later in the week. So it's gonna be a good time. So we have that, and we're gonna have a good time talking about Rebel Moon. Like you said, just throwing a little bit of variety on the podcast too this year, here and there, just because we're in a lot of not dull areas, but like kind of blank areas for any Star Wars content or any news for that matter, because we've seen how like they market things, and they we never even hear about anything until 4 to 6 weeks from the show or movie releasing. So at this point, we're just kind of in like the blank time for any sort of Star Wars news, really.
Yeah, I fully expect, and everybody out there, take this with a grain of salt. I have a good feeling we're going to learn some pretty big Star Wars news this upcoming week. When you think about it, last week was kind of a wash for most studios, most companies. Most people only had like a 4-day or a 3-day week. So, they're getting back into their groove, the execs and everybody else. And next week is this upcoming week is the first full week. Business is back. I think that's what we're going to see. But also Echo will be out on Tuesday. And once Echo's out, there's like nothing Marvel related we don't even know when. It's a huge blank slate for Marvel. But as we know, Star Wars fans, we have Tales of the Jedi. We have Bad Batch. We have The Acolyte. We have Skeleton Crew. I think this is going to be the year of Star Wars, at least on Disney Plus. So I fully expect like maybe Wednesday or Thursday, once Echo's already out, that's in the rearview mirror. Disney's always pointing us to the next best thing, and I think we're going to either get like the Bad Batch announcement, maybe the Acolyte announcements, maybe both. Maybe they'll just put out a big thing saying, hey, this is what you could expect. I would love to see like, quarter 1, we're getting this, quarter 2. They have enough content to put out something out in every quarter, and I fully expect that's what they would do if they want to, trickle this stuff out,
Oh yeah, I mean they could easily do that. I think kind of with the logic of, like I just mentioned, like kind of like the 4 to 6 week window of, announcing something potentially like they've done before. Maybe like you said, once they get Echo out, say if Bad Batch is in 4 to 6 weeks from now, say if it's like mid to end of February or even March, maybe this week or maybe the fall. I think within the next 2 weeks, I could see us maybe getting some sort of news.
Yeah, we just got to keep as much as we want to keep the fans at peace, it's also about, hey, we got to keep subscribers on Disney Plus. So Percy Jackson's going strong for the live action. Echo will be out and will be done because it's all being released on the same day. I'm so excited for that. As a big Daredevil fan, I hear that he's going to show up at some point. Kingpin is all over the marketing there. So these are two characters I really love in Marvel. So I'll show up just for them, and hopefully Echo as a character is pretty cool as well. Yeah, it was a hit and miss for me with her introduction in Hawkeye. I think maybe she should have shown up somewhere else, but anyways, I'm excited for that. Did you get any cool like Star Wars gifts for the holidays at all?
I got like a big 20 pack of different like Star Wars socks actually from my uncle.
Oh, I got one of those too. Yeah.
Yep, honestly, it was like a big 20 pack of Star Wars socks, so I have those now. And then let me think. That might have actually been my only Star Wars gift this year because I had that. Actually, I did have something else. So I had that, and I had a big, everybody knows the classic Christmas popcorn tins that you see at the store that are like $6 or whatever, like the big tins. And my mom got me a big Star Wars tin, and it has like a bunch of different like characters all over it and stuff, and it's like full of popcorn. So I had that, and I was snacking on that over winter break. But yeah, those were the only really two Star Wars gifts I got this year. Was just a big popcorn tin and then those socks.
Yeah. Speaking of pop, I got a pop. This is the Book of Boba Fett, or actually Season 2 Mandalorian after credit scene of good old Boba Fett sitting on Jabba's throne, flanked by Fennec Shan with her bottle of spotchka, her tiny miniature bottle of spotchka. I appreciate that detail. Yeah, this is the first kind of set piece sort of pop I have. I don't actively go after these things, but I certainly enjoy them. Even more so when people give them to me as gifts. I'm like, heck yeah. So I still got to find a spot for this thing. I love Boba Fett. I don't know. The show, I can't believe it's been like 2 years. Like I was just about to hit live on this video, and it popped up on my Facebook memories of one of the episodes that we reviewed here on Outer Rim Transmission. A social post I made was like, hey, remember this happened from 2 years ago? It's like, what? It's been that long already that we've been living with Daimyo Boba Fett. So yeah, I got this. I also got a really cool Mandalorian style like gym bag from my girlfriend for Heroes and Villains, which is a great brand if you haven't had anything from them recently. They're like a designer brand for nerds, essentially. They have really good quality stuff, really great original designs, and this bag has it all. It has the Mythosaur skull. It's like basically like that dark, like camouflage, like army kind of print. It's got a separate bag that's like a wet bag. If you have like board shorts or something, you're going swimming, you can throw it in there and you're not going to get anything else wet. They have a special compartment for your shoes. So it's a really good bag. I also have a book bag from them, which I go to conventions with, and it's like my X-Wing pilot bag that can hold a helmet. Like I walked around with my Mando helmet with the thing strapped to the back. I also have a Rogue Squadron like cool bomber jacket I got from them at Comic-Con one year. So yeah, I'm not even going to be sponsored by them. I would love to be sponsored by them, but yeah, I mean, Heroes and Villains, great stuff there. So I got that. Yeah.
Oh, go on.
That's basically Star Wars related. That's what I got.
Oh, I was gonna say. Oh, another thing too to mention that you got. Hey, I mean, you probably weren't expecting this, but another thing I was gonna mention as well over the break was, I got really far into the first Thrawn duology book. I only have like 3 hours left of that. It's an audiobook, and that one's really good as always because it like continues on. Like Luke and Mara and Han and Leia and like the whole gang. That takes place 10 years after the Thrawn trilogy, so I'm like getting that wrapped up here soon within the next day or two, couple days, and then I'm going to start on the second book of that, and then we'll see what we're doing next for the audiobooks. And I was going to like bring that up, just because like, Star Wars audiobooks are such like a big part of like, especially like me and Milton, like our content consumption for Star Wars. And I was going to say, Chris, you might have a thing to put on the radar of people that might not know, like, in terms of like audiobooks where they can get them at actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because just today, I found out about a couple days ago, but then I said, I'm at work today. I'm doing just stocking shelves in a refrigerator. I'm isolated. I'm not with anybody. So I usually listen to music, or I usually listen to podcasts. And in today's case, I was listening to an audiobook. So it was brought to my attention that Spotify, if you're a premium listener, or premium subscriber, you also get like, I think it's like the entire catalog of everything that Audible has of Star Wars or anything else you could possibly want. It's 15 hours a month. And that equates to about a book or two books. Because I
Yeah.
picked my first book, audiobook is Red Harvest by Joe Schreiber, who is the writer of Death Troopers. This is kind of the prequel. So I've been listening to that book, and that book is pretty short, I believe, because the audio book is only about 7.5 hours long. So I might be able to squeeze another Star Wars audiobook in the next 30 days if I finish this one, which probably won't take me much longer than a week. But yeah, I mean, it's really great to have another, because I'm also a Prime subscriber. So I could basically go on Audible, get a Star Wars audiobook on there. What do you get, like one a month there if you're a subscriber to
Yep.
Audio? So I could get my book over there. If I finish enough, then I could go over to Spotify, listen to another Star Wars audiobook. And, I love to read, because for me as a, content creator, I'm making content for you guys here on the reviews and different things. And it's easier for me to just like read the books and jot down notes. But for like Legends, I'm not covering Legends. So I don't mind listening to them, on audio version, because if I skip like a line or something, I don't feel like I need to go back to like write that detail down or something. Like I'm good. I get the general gist of the story. I'm all right. So that's kind of cool, because now I'm, on the days where I'm like running out of podcasts, it's like, oh crap, I'll just listen to music. Well, now it's like, oh, I could just listen to a Star Wars audiobook instead for whatever time on my shift I have left.
Yeah. Well, the good thing too with the Star Wars audiobooks, like in this one, for example, that I'm listening to, the first duology book, like in these books, most of the time the chapters are anywhere between, as short as like 25 minutes up to like 55 minutes. So, you don't have to go and tear through an audiobook, like say if it's, 8 hours, 10 hours or whatever, you don't have to tear through it in one 10-hour day. You can just be like, oh, I'll listen to a chapter a day, like 30 minutes a day,
Yeah.
spread it out over a month. Boom, you're good to go. Like it's not, that's not bad. Cause like, that's kind of how it is like with Audible, basically, you can, it's pretty much, it equates to one book a month is what it is. And that's basically what that is for like the Spotify setup. 15 hours on average, that's pretty much, there's no Star Wars audiobook I've ran into that's been over that yet. Like the highest I think for was the third book for the Thrawn trilogy. I think that was 14 hours maybe, or 13. So, there are some that are up there, but other than that, like, most of them, like you said, are 8, 10, 12, 11. Like, they're not bad on hours, and you can easily spread that out over a month if you just listen to a chapter here or there versus like, you can, it's just like anything else. If you binge watch a show in one day, it's done. Like,
Yeah. So the first book I picked was Red Harvest, as I said, and I'm on chapter 4, I believe, and oh my gosh, like you talk about a dark Star Wars book set in the Old Republic. It immediately grabbed my attention because it's all about the Sith, and you're from the point of view of a Sith acolyte, and this guy has been mind controlled by another initiate to fight him. And this character that he has to fight is one of the initiates, but he's very powerful, very dominant. And, other characters have fought and in some cases even killed themselves because of the shame of losing to him and the humiliation that they suffered because of losing this training battle. So this guy, I think his name's like Nectar or something like that. But anyway, he's fighting this guy, and he says, "Okay, I accept your duel," and like he didn't even intend to say that. Like he was straight up mind controlled to say yes to this guy. And then he's fighting this guy. The fight is like 30 seconds long, and the guy slashes his back close enough to sever his spinal cord. And he's leaning into the blade. These aren't lightsabers. These are like vibro swords, I believe. And in his mind, he's trying to resist against the urge of throwing his own body with his own free will onto sword that this initiate has. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like this, like it's going into the psyche of somebody trying to resist a Jedi mind trick, essentially. So it gets really brutal, and it gets to the point where like this guy survives only because the guy doesn't actually push him to actually do it. But then he's basically, this poor guy can't catch a break because then he's, in the hospital, like trying to get rejuvenated. And then he is shepherded out in the middle of the night, and he wakes up and he's in like a tiny little cage. And he's like, there's these Sith, like alchemist, like experiments that are going on with this guy. And it has to do with these like black lotus flower things, which I think are the black wing virus things. And they're being like introduced into his spine through like these 6 tubes coming out of his spine. And he's just realizing that is his awakening. And the Sith Lord is there like just looking at him and not even saying a word. And he's like, what is he looking at? He realized, oh my gosh, my back hurts so much because, yeah, they just put these tubes in me. And now they're injecting the tubes with whatever this flower thing is, and now I'm in intense pain to the point where he just passes out. So this is like an incredibly graphic, incredibly horrifying Star Wars book. I'm happy I picked this one because like just the way that this sounds, the usual audio book effects and the sound effects and the lights, everything is just so well done. It's not narrated by Mark Thompson. I'll have to pull up in a second to see who reads it, but yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Especially like you said, it's a kind of a pseudo prequel to Death Troopers, so it's really good because it sets up the entire like that basis of the Blackwing virus. I'm pretty sure.
Narrated by John Glover. Now I've not recognized that guy's name with Star Wars, and I haven't actually. I don't know when this actually came out. I don't know if it was remastered or anything like that, because it's not Essential Legends. But the reason why I picked this one also is because next to Knight Errant, I believe this is the only Legends Star Wars book I have not read. And as I was saying before, I'm it's in my ideas of starting from Dawn of the Jedi, the Void, and going all the way forward. I have the material. I could do it. I'm just finishing a George R. R. Martin book right now, and then I'll probably start that right afterwards. We'll see. But because the only reason why I say we'll see is because thanks to the fine people over at Disney Lucasfilm Press, they have sent me a nice little care package, and I now have the upcoming 2 Star Wars The High Republic Phase 3 books. I have Escape from Valo. I got to turn my camera on so I can see if this is coming into frame. Escape from Valo here. Started that one, great book. And then I have The High Republic Defy the Storm. This is the next young adult novel. So thanks to those folks. I will be getting these reviews out to you guys out ASAP. Whenever a new Star Wars books come out, I usually just kind of put all my hobbies on the side and just, barrel through these things. Because I do enjoy them. Not just because it's like, oh, I have to get these up fast. I'm usually intrigued, engaged enough to be like, I want to finish this. And so far, so good. Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong are teaming up to write Escape from Valo. And then you have Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton are writing Defy the Storm. So we got Escape from Valo is out at the end of this month. And then Defy the Storm is out I think on March 1st. So yeah. Stay tuned for that, but super pumped to see High Republic thriving.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, I know they're really expanding it out, especially with the Acolyte coming up. Like it's going to be a good time for the High Republic.
Oh yeah. I'm so pumped to see some of these characters make the leap from the pages to the screen, such as Vernestra Rowe. I cannot wait to see. And actually that one book, Defy the Storm, is actually a Vernestra Rowe book. So there we go. That's going to whet our appetite before we actually see her in live action for the first time.
Yeah.
And one final thing to say. Oh my gosh, with over 20 minutes in and we're not even in our main topic. Well, that's classic Outer Rim transmission for you. So this evening, my niece and nephew are over. And I got my nephew Young Jedi Adventure toys. We had our gift exchange this evening because things were hectic last week for Christmas. We just didn't get around to it. So anyway, they got their gifts today. I got my nephew a Nub Stuffy. I got him a Nub speeder bike little action figure, and I got him the Vector, like actual ship that the Jedi fly back in the High Republic. So he was really happy. So we started watching Young Jedi Adventures in the back room as we're eating our dessert. And they love that. They love that show. My niece is 8, my nephew is 4. And then I was like, "Hey, you guys want to watch Clone Wars?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." They don't know what it is. So I just turned on the Clone Wars movie of all things. Like, who would ever think that the first movie I would introduce my niece and nephew to with the Star Wars universe would be the freaking Clone Wars movie from 2008. But they freaking loved it. Like, we only watched like the first like 15 minutes, like up to the point where Ahsoka and Anakin are sneaking behind the shield generator to go and sneak and take out the shields. But like, they were basically damn near crying because they had to go to sleep because they have school tomorrow and they had to leave to go to bed. 8 o'clock. And I was like, dang, they're really hooked on Star Wars. They're asking me like, oh, who's that? Who's the bad guys? Who's the good guys? I was like, oh yeah, that's, this is, Padme is the mother of Leia and all this stuff. And they're like, where's Leia? She's not alive yet. It's like, oh, where's Grogu? And then the common thing kept coming up because even my aunt was in the room. Yoda would pop up. And then my mom would also be like, oh, that's Baby Yoda. And then my niece would be like, why is he so old? And I'd be like, oh, well, you don't understand. Everybody's been confusing Baby Yoda. It's not actually a baby version of Yoda. It's like a baby that looks like Yoda. It's not actually Yoda. But this is Yoda. This is Grandmaster Yoda. And then it was like funny because I was like sitting here trying to explain the difference between Grogu and
Grandpa
Yoda. Yeah, basically. And they're like, oh, okay. So there you have it. I finally did it. I showed those kids Star Wars, and I don't know how many other people could say they showed the Clone Wars movie as their first Star Wars experience.
I definitely would not have thought to introduce that way, but that's a good way to do it. I actually, you talking about your relatives and like you showing them, the Star Wars, showing them Clone Wars and all this. That actually reminds me, while we were on winter break as well, my 2.5-year-old niece, she loved my Disney Parks Luke blue lightsaber. The traditional Skywalker saber, and she loved that thing. Like when she realized you could turn it on, like she was carrying it around for a solid 2 hours. She just kept swinging it around, and just walking around our house, just swinging it, and and she just loved it. And she kept walking around going blue. So that was also another little Star Wars experience we had. And then speaking of Grogu. Look, soon, like you said, people with Grogu, even though he's not as big as what it was, in Mando season 1 and season 2, like even my 1-year-old niece, she just turned 1, and when she was crawling around over here 2 days ago, she spotted my little electronic Grogu out in the living room, and she just locked onto that thing and was smiling and crawled right up to it and just kept grabbing its ears, making it talk and move. And she just kept laughing and laughing and laughing. And, it was so great. Like my sister has the video on it. It's so cute because, you have her sitting up. She keeps hitting it in the head and, it keeps moving around and stuff. And she just kept laughing at it. And it was like they were sitting there talking to each other almost, So it's just crazy to see how, Grogu's like, interesting even to little kids that like a 1-year-old that can't communicate, like they see him and they're like, ooh, gotta check it out. So they like really struck gold making Grogu, especially because there's so many young kids, like your nieces and nephews, like mine, that have been introduced to Grogu, and now they're going to grow up with Grogu and kind of like be indirectly introduced to Star Wars, like via that one character.
Oh yeah. It is quite the thing, and nobody knew it was ever going to be that famous, or nobody knew it was going to be that popular enough to be like every kid was intrigued. They nailed the design. They absolutely nailed the design there.
Oh yeah.
All right, so I think it is time to get into the show proper, but first, housekeeping is in order. We go live every Sunday evening. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel because we usually go live anywhere between. We're going to try to get back to 7 p.m. around 7:15. So make sure you're subscribed because that way you'll know exactly when we begin to go live. And then we have our chat that is always lively and positive. So if you want to be part of that community here on Starrapter, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button to show your support. And we are available to download on any podcast streaming app of your choice. Just search Out of Room Transmission. Apparently Google Podcasts is going to be deleted in April. So you can find us on Spotify and Apple Music, and Amazon, I think, has a streaming service, and there's a lot of other ones. But yeah,
Yep.
just search Outer Rim Transmission. You'll be sure to find us there. And please, on any platform, social media, YouTube, whatever, please comment and like and share our podcast so more of you guys can join in our awesome community here. And for releases this week, it's been holiday season, but comics are keep on rolling on. And we have Darth Vader issue number 42 starts a new arc. That's the first issue that follows the Dark Droid saga, which has now concluded. And we also have Shadows of Starlight issue number 4, which is the fourth and final piece of this miniseries that branches us between the 1 year gap between phase 1 and 3 of the High Republic. So you can check out my review there. You could also check out the long form discussion that me and Matthew had over on the Tractor Beam Weekly show we do on Wednesday nights. That is available on the Star Wars Underworld Network. So go ahead and subscribe over there to see my in-depth thoughts and Matthew's very in-depth thoughts on every comic release. We go live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. It's comic book day. What better way to spend it by having a lively discussion with the community right there on the Star Wars Underworld Network. All right, so it's been very slow on the news, as we kind of said off the top, and I'm thinking about a topic, the last couple of days. What are we going to talk about? We could vamp for an hour. That's perfectly fine. But I was thinking outside the box, and within the last week, I have watched Rebel Moon. And as I said off the top, this was originally heavily inspired by Star Wars. Zack Snyder wanted this to be part of Star Wars, but he went his own way with Netflix. So yeah, I watched the movie. I enjoyed it for the most part. I was really hooked on it from the get-go, and then it kind of more or less lost me towards the end of it. But, it's kind of a review episode, but not really, because it's just really... Okay, this movie's sci-fi, but not as much fantasy, and that's what Star Wars sci-fi fantasy is. So, in other words, this episode, whatever we're trying to discuss here, getting at the point of all this is, okay, what makes Star Wars compared to other sci-fi? So we're shining the light between these two properties, and that kind of gives us, hey, maybe there's some things we like about Rebel Moon that we actually like more than Star Wars. Hey, we're gonna identify these things, but I'll throw it over to you. What just in general, what was your overall impressions of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, Ben?
Oh, I mean, for starters, it was definitely a Zack Snyder movie. I love Zack Snyder too. I'm he's one of my favorite directors. Of course, he's not on the level of Christopher Nolan or Spielberg or anybody like that. But Zack Snyder's one of my favorite directors. I just like his. I think for me, honestly, with a lot of his work, I like his camera work a lot in most of his projects. I feel like his cinematography is always, it's so unique. When you watch it, it's a Zack Snyder produced movie. You can just tell by the way it's shot. But I just like that style of shooting. And then for this movie as a whole, my initial thoughts and impressions, like you said, I enjoyed it for the most part. I enjoyed a lot of the characters, the action. It definitely had a lot of A New Hope vibes to it, to say the least. I would say, especially you have your innocent, your quote unquote your farm village being ruled upon by the bad guys, aka the Empire. It had major A New Hope vibes to certain parts of it, to a certain degree. But then you also had with it being a Netflix movie, they could be more violent and more more edgy than say a Star Wars movie ever could be. So you have those sorts of things, and then some of the sequences, like when I was watching it, I was thinking about Star Wars when I was watching it, because I was like, man, some of the sequences, like you could imagine, like if you put a Star Wars filter over it, like, I could see where this could be like a Star Wars thing, like, certain scenes, the way certain scenes are shot, the way they look, the way some of the characters and the bad guys are, the way, like, we get like the villain at the end, like making the threat to the other little villain and stuff and all that. Like that felt really like, Vader going to the Emperor type thing, like it felt like that, like it had those type of vibes, and trust me, like I really enjoyed the movie, but I am terrible with names on this movie. Like I honestly don't remember the names. But like, you have the bad guy meeting with the lower bad guy at the end and stuff. So it's kind of like your Vader Emperor meeting type deal. And it just had a lot of Star Wars vibes to a degree for some of it. But like you said, it did, toward the end of it is where it kind of loses you, because like you said, I enjoyed it for the most part. It's just when it comes to this movie, it really feels like they took and chopped a movie in half. Like it feels like this was truly like a part one, and like I think there's a chance we go to watch the second movie, and you could when we watch it, we'll be like, we could just splice these two movies together into one mega like 5-hour movie or something. Like, like I just feel like they just cut a movie in half, because when it ends, it's like, oh, we're at the end, like,
Yeah, I think a lot of my sentiments relate to yours in that, Ben. I like how this. First off, I like, and we could dive in each one of these things individually for the discussion, but I like the world building. I was on when we got that little opening sequence of the slain king and this empire and all over the galaxy. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good building up.
You even get the Chosen One kind of references, kind of. It's like the.
Yep.
Go on.
I love the iconography of like Roman type stuff in a sci-fi universe. I mean, this is the guy that gave us 300. So it's not a big surprise that he would also be dipping into that, but then dipping into like kind of Nazi stuff, right? Like with these officers, and that's what Star Wars did originally, right? Like the Imperial officers are basically, that's the regime of the Nazis, essentially, is the Empire. So you got that whole thing, which is not original, right? Just Star Wars did it. But this idea of a character that was so much, this is what's different about Star Wars that I appreciate, is the character. I believe her name is Cora. I think, right? How her upbringing was like so turbulent, so traumatic. She's working for these guys, and then rebelled, and then she's getting these flashbacks and telling these stories, and it just, she was a rich, she's like the rich character out of this whole story, and hopefully she is, because she's the main character out of all these characters. But yeah, I mean, the combat, this is, like you said, this is very much a Zack Snyder movie. You could totally see a lot of that slow-mo, and I love that stuff. It's not for everybody, and a lot of people are just gratuitous violence for no reason, but I expect it. It doesn't bother me. And I think it's quite flashy. And it was really cool going from that first sequence when we saw Cora sticking up for that girl that was, being harassed and all that. I thought that was really cool. And then like the idea of like the weaponry and the guns and everything around that. Now, there's the creature design. I gotta call that creature design out, because going from like the steeds that they ride on around the original planet. See, I'm bad with names too. And I don't have notes in front of me. I guess I should have been better prepared, but that's whatever. The horses looked like they just had a mask thrown on horses. Yep. And they were just walking around. Like, there were some budgetary things that I questioned. Okay, like, really? You couldn't just do a little bit more unique of a design, because this looks too much like Earth. And then another thing was they basically just had a griffin that they were trying to tame. There was really no difference between that and any other griffin I've ever seen in like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt or any like D&D or anything like it was, the designs needed some work, in my opinion. I think they have great world building, great ideas. I liked seeing the jet setting of this entire story going from one planet to a different kind of colony there and back. It really made the world feel big and great. I like how we jump into the story immediately after these certain events. That's what Star Wars does with The New Hope. You're in the middle of a battle that's happening right before your eyes, and you're just thrust into it. I think a lot of good action stories usually benefit from a story where you go fast paced in, and you're getting some of the exposition. And that's the thing I don't like is like there's a lot of exposition in this. Sometimes it's better to like just show, don't tell. So yeah, this is a mixed bag for me. It's a mixed bag for me. Overall, I agree from a certain perspective what you were saying about, oh yeah, this feels like half a movie. I feel like there was a lot of stuff that it's not that it's like the half of the whole for me. I just feel like the reason why we don't remember these characters' names is because they don't leave an impression, because they don't have time to leave an impression, because you're going, as much as I like the jet setting around, planet hopping, it's just kind of at a blur. You're meeting one guy for 10 minutes, then another girl for 10 minutes, then this character for 10 minutes. And they don't get enough time to shine, and they just float into the background, and they just become this like nameless band of rebels that just doesn't really do much for me. And I think that's the main thing for me is it just doesn't feel like I should care about these characters at all. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like with that, it's like, I feel like maybe he's going for more of, maybe that's his intent. Like, you have Korra as the main person, and then the rest of it's like, building up kind of like your rebellion type thing, I guess. But like for me with some of the characters, like when it came to like I wish we had more time with like the villain at the end, because when he got to that, I was like, man, this is interesting, because it's like your villain looming over everybody type vibes.
Yeah.
Like kind of like your Emperor stuff. And I was like, man, I wish we had more stuff with him, just because his character seemed interesting. So yeah, like you said, it just, I think the world building is like world building, the world building, the classic like Zack Snyder's action stuff. That all the Zack Snyder tropes, I think he hit out of the park. Like they were all really good. It's just some of the other aspects of it where, where to say, I guess, where Zack Snyder ventured out of Zack Snyder's, specialty stuff. Like when he ventured out to the other type of, stuff you have in a movie, that's where things got a little shaky. Like character balance on like, what character to have more story time or less story time or whatever. And then like, continuing to like blend them into the story. And like for me, like you were saying, like it felt like, like with the world building stuff, he did good on that, because, and that mimics a lot of his stuff he's done before in the past. Like, in both 300 movies, you're jumping around from like, main Spartacus to the bad guys, or like in Rise, you jump around from like the bad guys to the main Spartacus to, to the other people. And then like even in Man of Steel, you have Krypton, you have Superman in Russia or wherever he's at the beginning. And then you have like Lois Lane and her story. Like, so he's good at bouncing around stories like that. It's just this movie, I think what it was, if you think about a movie like Man of Steel, the reason that movie's so well put together, or even 300, in my opinion, 300 I think is his best movie, the original one. But like even that movie, you have like a core group of like 3 characters that are focused on, versus like this movie, you have like so many characters. It's like boom, 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 boom. We're getting all these characters thrown at us, versus just focusing on like Korra, the bad guy, and maybe like another side character or something. Like this one, it's like, we have this character, this character, this character, like, this random farmer, this person, like, all these characters, versus just focusing on like your main 3 or 4 characters.
Oh yeah. I think the element this is missing, and not necessarily saying this automatically makes any movie bad for not having this sci-fi, but like any element of like the mystical side of things. There's no supernatural, right? There's no force entity or anything like that. And that, I think when it comes down to Star Wars, that is the biggest thing for me that really sets itself apart in a higher tier than everything else, because it's that like magic sense mixed with the realism, and there's just nothing of the sort in this at all.
Yeah, I mean, I saw someone say, and I can't like argue it too hard, but it's kind of like, someone I saw someone post, I can't take credit for it, but they were like, this is kind of like a sci-fi version of 300 to a degree, and like I can't argue that too hard because has a lot of the similar vibes as that. So like you said, like with more like the religion, like that vibe of like the force or like some entity. Maybe even if you would include like more of like an entity of like, some type of god or, something like that in this, maybe that would have helped this potentially a little better. Because, one of the biggest reasons like say A New Hope works out so well, in my opinion, is like Alec Guinness sells the force so well.
Yeah.
And like, in my opinion, like that entire scene of Alec Guinness, like talking to Obi-Wan talking to Luke in the hut, about the Force, about the past, about the dark times. That entire sequence, that's one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars, I think, in terms of just like impact on, like not just in universe, but outside of the universe, because that scene sold Star Wars for a lot of people. Like it got a lot of people on board to believe in this whole mystical Force power, basically. Because like for all intents and purposes, like if he doesn't sell that scene, then maybe the entire audience is more like Han Solo in the movie, where he doesn't care about the Force and doesn't believe in it. So Alec Guinness, like the way they made that scene in A New Hope, like that was one of the big reasons Star Wars worked. So like this movie's kind of like lacking that, but and it's so hard to this is one of my things about comparing things to Star Wars. It's so hard to compare stuff to Star Wars because like Star Wars is like a top 5, 6-ish IP of all time, and then you have like everything else. So it's like it's so hard to compare. But I mean, this does have its elements where it's similar, but it definitely has elements where it's very different.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as far as getting into the actual heart of it, right? Like if a story doesn't really have heart, almost like what's the point, right? Like you gotta find something to latch on about. We go to movies, we experience these cinematics to really get invested, leave the world behind, and then get into something. And for here, I couldn't feel as attached. I feel like the most attached I got was the robot, right? It's kind of like the take on C-3PO in a sense, where it's this robot is working for the bad guys, and then he has like sentience about him. He's got like, it's funny because I just got done with the Dark Droids, big crossover that's been happening over 5 months with Star Wars Marvel, and you have this character of Ajax Sigma, who is, speaking of religion, he's got like this religious kind of background. The first revelation in his eyes is the eye. A droid actually acknowledging, like L337 in Solo, acknowledging that they are independent, they are their own being. They are alive, essentially, not just a machine. They are self-aware. So the idea that this robot, like, understands that, has that conversation with that girl, and then is able to make the call and, like, shoot the bad guy at the end and save the day. I thought that was great. That was one of the best moments of the whole movie. And again, that was in the beginning of the movie, so things kind of pick up speed. I feel like they had a good pace at that point. But then as soon as they left the planet, that's when things started getting like a little bit too like, all right, let's maybe slow down just a little bit.
Oh yeah, once they left the planet, it was just like boom, 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 all over the place with a lot of the different things. And like you said, that droid was a really good part of the movie, I think, in my opinion, for the characters, and in terms like kind of like the heart of it, and like you were saying, like with kind of the heart of it, like like in Star Wars, you have the heart with the different characters, like obviously in like A New Hope, because that's kind of like the example I feel like Zach would probably got inspiration from. Like in A New Hope, you have Luke, you have Alec Guinness, or you have Luke, you have Obi-Wan, you have obviously Luke has the heart of it. He has to deal with his parents aunt and uncle getting killed. He's dealing with all of this stuff. Like, there's good heart to that movie, and even if you like even step outside of that movie, like if you look at like that's the funny thing about this movie is like even if you look at a lot of Zack's other work, like he's been pretty good in my opinion at doing like the whole character heart thing. Like, in 300 you like you have Leonidas, and then you have Leonidas's wife, Lena Headey, the one who plays Cersei from Game of Thrones. That whole story stuff with her is great as like a B plot storyline. And at the end, she kills the one guy in front of like the court of men. Like, she kills the guy who was like coming at her about Leonidas and everything. And it's like such a good B plot storyline. It's fulfilling and all that stuff, even for her character, much less Leonidas by the end of it. So like, like Zack's done good heart with his characters before. So that's why like in this movie, it's kind of like, did he try to go like way too on the nose with some of this stuff of like, okay, let's just try to put together what I would think like a Star Wars movie would be versus like, okay, how can I explain this? Like maybe Zack was thinking like, okay, what would I think a Star Wars would be versus like, what would be the best way I could make a Star Wars movie? It's different. Like, what you're, if I'm like kind of like giving my inspiration, not my inspiration, like instead of me using my talent and stuff to make a Star Wars movie, I'm trying to make something that I think looks like a Star Wars movie. You know what I'm saying? It's two totally different things. Like, because if they would have, say, hired him to make this as, like, his Star Wars movie, or, like, a Star Wars movie versus, like, what he would think is a Star Wars movie, I think you get two different things, just because it's, like, it's different when you impersonate something versus creating something.
Yeah, my biggest thing, right? Even without the Force, big, strong emotional moment, one of the best moments in a Star Wars saga in general, is Luke on his homestead at the sunset of the Twin Suns, pondering his life and where he's going to go with the Force theme playing behind him. It's one of the most powerful moments in cinema, period. And yeah, we don't get anything like that in this movie, right? It's like, all right, let's go from point A to point B. It's mainly more about plot than it is about character story. Yep. If you kind of understand what I mean by that.
Oh yeah, it definitely feels like it's more like plot driven for sure, where it's more just like kind of checkboxy versus like, fleshing out some of these characters, fleshing out some of these moments. Like, maybe you should have had a moment with like Cora's character where things slow down a little bit more. Maybe she had like a reflection moment. I mean, heck, even if Zack wanted to go kind of like on the nose with it and like have a moment of her like staring and looking off at like, something like, just do something like if you're gonna try to make like a Star Wars movie and kind of like impersonate some of the things, like you might as well just impersonate some of the better moments at this point, so I mean, that's my thing. Heck, you're already 60% of the way there on some of the stuff. You might as well go up to 90 or 80. Like, might as well, I think he should have included some of the stuff like that. Like, maybe give her like more of like a reminiscing type moment or something, or, just something, just something to add that little bit of heart that was kind of like needed to this movie versus, just making it a big like action plot, like experience. I mean, heck, even in like the sequel to 300, Rise of an Empire, like in that movie, you have good character heart with, you have the main Spartan, I can't think of his name, but then you have Eva Green's character. She's like, the Empress, like the evil Empress, and you have her entire backstory of where she, grew up as like a slave on a slave ship and all this stuff, and she worked her way up from, being this poor little slave girl to ruling the entire empire basically, and become this evil villain. So like, like that's the baffling thing I think for me with this movie. Like when I watched it, that was one of the things that I thought about was like, man, like he's done good with some of his character heart on some of his characters before in the past, and it's just like this one, it's kind of a whiff. It's like where it's just like you said, it's just kind of like plot points basically.
Yeah, it's funny because you're saying, maybe just mimic more scenes from Star Wars. Essentially, I thought like the most egregious part of this movie was when they go to the town on the same starter planet, the farming planet. They go to like the little city, and it's basically the Mos Eisley of this place, right? It's like you walk in, there's like rough housing going on, there's bounty hunters. They literally walk into like the same cantina of Mos Eisley, right? The same things play out. It's like the person, it's Cora goes up, somebody's getting rough with her. She takes the guy down. There's a bar fight, and there's another guy that's a pilot there saying, "Hey, I can give you a ride. Where do you want to go?" It's literally beat for beat Star Wars, and that was just so egregious to me. I said, "Oh my gosh, he just did his own Star Wars right here."
Yeah,
so I don't know how I'd feel about a whole movie being like that.
Yeah, no, well, see that's the thing. Like, I think there's a balance though, where okay, if you don't go, maybe don't go on the nose with like a scene like that, but take some of the style, the symbolism from the Star Wars movies. Like I said, like the Luke staring off into the sunset. Give us a moment, maybe not Cora staring into the sunset, but maybe her like, like I don't even know, like reflecting on something, or like just something like just I can't come up with a creative idea on the spot, but you know what I mean. Just give us something that would be meaningful to her character, that would be more impactful to say the viewing audience as a whole as well. Because like that Luke scene is one of the most iconic scenes in Star Wars. Like I've seen the gif of Luke like staring off into the sunset posted so many times on social media before, and it's because it's just like an iconic scene. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how the second part of this movie plays out for sure. And I think it's only coming out, here in February or March. Like, it's soon. So we'll find out very soon.
No, I think we have to wait until April.
Is it? Oh, I was thinking it was here sooner than that, but
I know.
Oh, dang. So okay, yeah. So April then, yeah.
That's why. Yeah, that's why I feel like, did they really need to separate it? Couldn't they have just released these parts sooner? Because honestly, part one doesn't even feel complete, if you know what I mean. I kind of get that notion you were saying before now. It's like, when you look at this part one as a whole, it's just getting these people into action, but nothing really happens except the villain dies, but then comes back to life again in a weird apparatus. And that's one thing I do like about this. It's just the crazy technology of it all, and how that integrates with their people there, the humans, even if they are humans, I don't know. But it's just interesting how I think that was really good. The prop design, the idea that these guns are, DNA tracked to people and they'll blow up in your hand if you're not them. Like, that was a really cool touch. I did enjoy that. And I overall like the idea that this is more violent, but I'm just wondering, why couldn't it be rated R? Like, go all the way, right? Like, I think this was originally pitched to be rated R, which is why Lucasfilm didn't take it up. So I'm scratching my head thinking, what the heck? Because then there's reports going around that Zack Snyder said, "Oh, this wasn't my. I have an unedited version of this movie, which is different or something." Have you heard anything about that? Yeah, no. There's literally like a Snyder cut of this movie. I think that's like his rated R version of this movie.
See, and the crazy thing, like, I don't know, here we go, getting into the like hashtag make the Snyder cut happen, or release the Snyder cut, release the Snyder cut part 2, I guess. But the crazy thing to say about all that is, like, it's not even like a big like tinfoil hat conspiracy, because the thing is, we've seen it happen before with his movies. Like, look, we see what happened with Justice League. Like, don't get me wrong, Zack did work on this movie, clearly, obviously. Like, he worked on it and stuff. But, we saw, when you watch Justice League, the Whedon version, where Zack had to leave it, obviously because the tragic stuff that happened with his daughter. But, like, when he had to leave that versus the actual Snyder cut, those are completely different movies. So it just makes you wonder now, is like, oh no, are we in another situation where, like, we have this version of the movie, and then, like, if they release like a 3.5 hour version of this movie, would it be like drastically different?
Yeah, I'm looking this up now on Screen Rant. Zack Snyder clarifies details about Rebel Moon's director's cut. He clarifies just how different this cut would be. Okay, Zack Snyder's director cut of Rebel Moon Part 1 will be a completely different movie with a different vision for the franchise. Unlike many director's cuts, Snyder's cut is not just an extended version, but a new universe within the movie. The director's cut will be a fully realized R-rated version of the movie that reflects Snyder's original vision. What?
Does it say if it's coming out?
Oh my gosh, let's see. Created and directed by Zack Snyder, Rebel Moon was released. Okay, no, this is not... Okay, here we go. Here's the quote. It's not an extended cut of this movie. It's almost like a different movie. It's almost a different universe that the R-rated cut lives in than this movie. The reason for that is because it's such a philosophical thing to shoot a director's cut of a movie before you finish this version. All of my director's cuts existed as a response to things that were demanded by me to be taken out of the theatrical version, right? With Rebel Moon, that demand was never really made. We knew it would be a PG-13 movie in my heart of hearts. I'd always wanted it to be rated R, but you realize that sort of scale and cost of a movie like this, well, it's not 100% responsible to have to be that kind of demand. They were like, what if we said, do whatever you want to do over here. Do the PG-13 version and then go nuts with the other cut. We don't care. That was a thing I've never experienced before. It will be a really crazy experience for fans because it's the fully realized weirdo, heavy metal, bizarro land movie. Well, that is crazy.
So that means we're getting that eventually.
Yeah, I think Netflix was like, okay, I bet you this is what it is. I bet you if part 1 does whatever numbers it needs to do, if there's enough demand, they'll be like, okay, make the R-rated cut.
Well, and I think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
No, I'm saying that's why this movie feels the way it does. That's why it feels like it's missing things, because this wasn't his real vision, but they couldn't back him on a budget with an R-rated movie that wasn't proven to this level on Netflix.
Well, here's the thing to think about too. Here we go, talking about, I mean, gosh, not even conspiracy. Zach literally confirmed it. But here's kind of your Netflix conspiracy with all this too. Think about it this way. For marketing, okay, you release this version, and then 6 months from now you go, the official Snyder cut of Rebel Moon coming out December 2024 or something. Like, you know, because think about all the hype around the Snyder cut for Justice League. You had that whole thing. So like maybe Netflix is looking at it kind of like a DC-esque thing of like, hey, we can capitalize on fans getting into the director's cut of the movies.
Yeah, but I don't understand this because it doesn't even sound like they even wrote well, maybe he did write a script knowing him, but like it doesn't sound like they filmed 2 separate movies though. They would have to call back the entire cast and everything to be like, oh yeah, you're going to shoot this entire movie again, but guess what? It's actually completely different. This is unprecedented. This has never been done before at all.
This is interesting. I mean, see, that's the thing too. Like you said, before you even got into that whole article, you said it was kind of like, you know, you wanted them just to go all the way with it. And it really feels like it. Like, I mean, look how Zach confirmed it basically right there. You know, you have it as a PG-13 and, you know, it really could, you know, for it to be like fully fleshed out, would have been rated R. And I feel like part of Zach's like PG-13 thing too was in the back of his head, like, oh, you know, we got to be kind of like Star Wars. We can't have it rated R. You know, probably in the back of his head, he was thinking about that. So that's why, you know, you probably scale some of that stuff back. And, you know, that's where I would have preferred Zack Snyder to say, you know what? I'm going to do my inspirations from Star Wars. You know, thank you, Star Wars, for the inspirations. But I'm going to give you a rated R Star Wars, you know, and lean into it. Like, just lean into it. Don't be scared. Just lean into it. Versus, like, you know, trying to play it close to the vest and conservative. And then you come out with a movie like this, where, like you said, it feels like it's missing a lot of things, certain points. And look, you know, we get to this interview with him basically saying, yeah, like, the actual version is completely different.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe a year and a half from now, we might be having the same podcast again with how does the Snyder cut of Rebel Moon compare with Star Wars? We might have some more discussions based on that. But yeah, that is quite interesting. Quite interesting because
Yeah.
then it's like, all right, what version? Okay, this is not the canonical version of the story anymore. If you want to watch PG-13, go watch that. Then you're gonna have the stalwarts that are like, yeah, the PG-13 is the better version, and then the extended edition, or you might not even, maybe they'll call it Rebel Moon instead of Child. What is it called? Child of Fire or something like that.
Yep.
Maybe he'll just have like new subtitles, and that's how you'll be able to tell the difference between them.
I mean, it might just be literally like on HBO where it says Justice League 2017 and Justice League the Snyder Cut 2020 or whatever year it was.
Yeah.
It might literally just say, Rebel Moon, the Snyder Cut or something. Or actually, they might have to change that verbiage maybe because of copyright, but it might be like the Snyder Edition or something.
Yeah,
but that's interesting. Like, now that you said that, it makes me think then going into this next movie, because it's clearly shot already, the one that's coming out in April. Like, it's clearly done and in the can. So that means most likely, if we extrapolate this out, there's probably a director's cut of the next thing that we're going to watch.
Well,
there's probably
yeah.
Go on.
I'm kind of like almost. I mean, I always watch these things, but it's kind of like in the back of my head, I'm like, what's the point of this? Because he's going to be making the definitive version of his vision. So we're watching this now as a placeholder for what might be showing potential for whatever might come down the line with his. So there's always this sense of, am I wasting my time? I'm going to watch anyway because it's like good popcorn action.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, what are we really doing here?
Yeah, it just feels like I think what it is, the more that we discuss it, the more that I think about it. I think it's kind of like he signed his deal with Netflix and they were like, "Hey, we want a project soon or something, And he pretty much said, "Hey, let's do my idea for the Star Wars Rebel Moon thing." And then they did it quick, and that wasn't his actual version, like you said, the rated R version is like the completely different universe type that he was going for. So is this kind of like, oh no, here we go with like sequel trilogy references, but is this kind of like our Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, kind of all getting, hey, it's not an Outer Rim Transmission podcast if I don't have to throw them in there, but is this kind of like a situation how we had like Force Awakens and Last Jedi, where those movies were being written at the exact same time? They were, I mean, in Bob Iger's biography, like he pretty much indirectly confirms, like, they kind of put the pressure on Lucasfilm, like, we want movies ASAP, we want them out now, like, so those movies were kind of rushed, aka that's why there was such a loose plan with them. Is this kind of a similar situation where like Zack got his deal with Netflix, like he left his HBO stuff, or he left his Warner Brothers stuff and went to Netflix? Is this kind of his thing now where it's like, hey, we want something from, why are we paying you however much money we're paying you? We want a movie now. So like maybe that's why this movie got just pushed out, because they wanted it, to meet a quota potentially. Yeah.
I mean, they have to appease by subscribers. But yeah, it's crazy. Netflix, they release new stuff every single week. You really can't keep track. I miss the old days of Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, because those were like the only two original programs they had. Nowadays, it's like they don't put out trailers for barely anything, and you're just expected to like go on the main screen and be like, oh, your new season is up there, or whatever. There's not a lot there. There's a lot of stuff to churn through, right? How do you make noise? And then it's like, how do you make noise against Max or Disney Plus with their Star Wars and their Marvel content? So this is like Netflix's sci-fi, right? Netflix has their fantasy series with Witcher. This is their kind of take to combat against Star Wars, but in a different format, since it is a movie on streaming. But I mean, there's a lot of potential here. I think he's built something really cool that, every one of these characters that are introduced essentially could have their own spin-off series. So I'm just curious to be like, are they really just going to make this a two-part movie? Are they going to, expand the universe, so to speak, are they going to create maybe an animated series for a certain character? Or maybe they'll actually have a prequel movie about how this king got slain and the battle with that. Or there's I will say, just like Star Wars in the original 1977, there's a lot of great stuff that is said in dialogue, such as the Clone Wars, that it took them 30 years real time to actually tell a story set in the Clone Wars, right? So there's a lot of fertile territory, and just like George Lucas, I think Zack Snyder has a good head on his shoulders for how to create good storytelling and how to create fiction that has long breaths of life and that could just evolve over time. I am curious.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely curious to see where they go with it, because that was kind of my thinking as well. Is like, are these two movies kind of your quote unquote original trilogy? And then, like you said, they mentioned the king before getting slain, the slain king, like that whole thing. I feel like they didn't name drop that and put that in there for like like for nothing. Like I could see them eventually, maybe a couple years from now doing a prequel and doing, maybe instead of Star Wars doing sequels, they just do duologies. Like maybe their prequel era is going to be 2 movies, and then if they do a sequel era, 2 movies, or anything like that. Because like Zack Snyder like builds out his universes. I mean, look at like the DCEU. Like you have those movies kind of like build out and build up to the Justice League stuff. And then, even his 300 movies, like just those 2 movies, you have them crossing over with each other, obviously. And then, also another thing too to keep in mind with Netflix, like I said, Zack Snyder's in business with them. I'm pretty sure, if they're not already, I haven't looked into them, but I was reading an article a few weeks back over Christmas break that, like the Snyder movies are supposed to be coming to Netflix at some point this year, I believe. Like the Snyder DC movies. Like so like obviously like they're in business with them, in pretty good cahoots with them. So like maybe, like you said, maybe he's gonna be able to develop his own kind of Snyderverse for Rebel Moon. Like maybe this is gonna be like their kind of like Disney Plus Star Wars. It's gonna be their thing.
Yeah, they're doing it kind of reverse order. Maybe they're trying to do reverse order from what the MCU was, right? Instead of building up to the Avengers, they essentially show us the Avengers, and then they take a sequel approach where they're like, okay, you've seen all these characters involved. Some of them cool abilities like red fiery blades that can emit. Now let's get a story about that character, or a story about this character, and then we build up to the next one. So, yeah, we've seen the downfall of the DCU because unfortunately there wasn't enough groundwork laid prior to Justice League to really get people excited, to really show us some weight of the whole thing. I don't know. We got to watch part 2 still, and we got to watch apparently whatever this next iteration of his own vision is already to really get a good idea.
That's hilarious. I did not even know about that until you brought it up on here. So hey, it's good to know. Like that puts that movie. See, like, I mean, like you said, we both, for the most part, like this movie. It was like you said, it was good popcorn. Like this movie is exactly what I'd imagine sitting down and watching, like a random Netflix movie. Like this is literally a random. It feels like a random Netflix Zack Snyder movie. And like now that I know there's actually more to it, it kind of lightens, like, I enjoyed this movie, but even it lightens my like critique on the movie even more, because it's like, well, we really didn't see what the movie was actually supposed to be. So like how, okay, here's an easy one. Like if you go and chop up A New Hope 7 different ways, like would we really like that movie the same way? Like if you cut out, like, I don't know, you cut out Luke's sunset scene. You cut out, Obi-Wan talking to Luke in the X-Wing. You cut out some of those, like, moments. Those type of things. Like, maybe the movie doesn't hit near as well. I mean, heck, even if you go back to, like, the major edit, change Darth Vader's voice back to the original guy. Like, go do that, and that would drastically change that movie. So, like, it just makes you wonder, like, what the actual like rated R version is supposed to look like. And like even in Zack Snyder's words, it's pretty much like a totally different like universe. So it's like what in the world, you know, what are we working with here? But I feel like, in my opinion, with Rebel Moon, they probably, I mean, Netflix doesn't release their numbers, so we'll never know. But
wait, did they release them though?
I don't know if they did. They usually don't
Rebel
release,
Moon is like the top rated show.
Oh, okay, yeah. So here's the thing. This is the thing. What I was meaning was like, I feel like just in general, like without even you saying that, I feel like in general, like this movie had enough buzz, like just from people talking about it, the hype around it going into it, and it was over the holiday season, so like it probably got viewed a lot, and even from the people like the critics that were like, like really like shredding this movie to pieces. The thing is, a lot of times when critics shred movies to pieces, that gets a lot of people's ears perked up because you're like, man, I want to go see why that movie's so bad. There's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I got an update on the numbers from Screen Rant again. Shortly after its release on December 21st, the first part of Zack Snyder's sci-fi epic is officially the #1 movie on Netflix for the week of December 18th through 24th. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, received 54.1 million hours viewed and 23.9 million total views, taking a #1 spot on Netflix's global top 10.
29 million views, that's good for a random sci-fi movie like this, basically.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think the creators or the execs at Netflix really care about negative reviews. They're looking at how much people get to watch the thing. How many millions of views of hours do they get? And that will just be like, okay, well, those are subscribers. That's money in our eyes. Doesn't matter. Okay. It's like if the movie did, 500 million at the box office and it has like a 20% Rotten Tomatoes. Who the heck cares? That movie just made a money, Well, they'll make another one. It doesn't matter. There's been so many sequels of bad movies that have been made simply because they have generated money for the company to print money. And it's just like, okay, we're going to just keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, look, not to like always dog on episode 8, but look at The Last Jedi. It was so divisive. So many fans don't like it whatsoever, etc., etc., etc. But that movie made a lot of money. So of course, I mean, and it's Star Wars, like you have to continue making Star Wars. But even if that wasn't like Star Wars on the label, like if you have that exact movie happen and it makes like I think it made 1.4 or something. It was over over a billion.
Over a billion. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I think it was 1.4, maybe it was close to 1.5, I think. So anyways, around that range, any movie that makes 1.4 billion, no matter how divisive it is, they're going to make another one because the viewership, the money, and this obviously Netflix isn't a ticket service like a movie would be like in that scenario, but viewership, it being top 10 for that week, #1, etc. Like all that stuff, those are good numbers, and those are the numbers, for example, like Zack Snyder would need to be like, hey, look, executive, whoever, whatever your name is, my movie was #1 and outshined all your other stuff. Let me make another movie. So it's like, it gives him credence to continue making it because, what would have happened if he would have made that movie and it wouldn't even have been in like the top 10 or 20 or anything.
Yeah.
Like, then they would have said, well, we can't continue this. I mean, look, that's kind of what happened with Solo. Solo bombed and made like, I think 450, 500 million. Like, so they, even though like a lot of people enjoy it now after the fact, they can't greenlight another movie because the pure numbers are terrible for that movie. So like with this movie, since the numbers were good, it was really good for that week, obviously. That's like that's a good sign for Netflix in their eyes, like, hey, people want to see this stuff, so why not make another one?
Yeah, and it's exactly the dilemma that George Lucas faced with Fox when making the original Star Wars. The original Star Wars is technically an independent movie because George Lucas used all his funds from THX 1138 and from American Graffiti, his own money, to just basically fund it. and he just said to 20th Century Fox, like, hey, yeah, you guys could put this, like, I don't know exactly what the deal was, but barely, like, they had, like, no control at all, like, because he funded all of it himself.
Yep.
And that's the thing here. Zack Snyder, this is what happens. The studios are getting in the weeds with the filmmakers, and that's why we end up with a PG-13 movie instead of a rated R movie that he actually wanted. So part of it is like, yeah, this movie feels weird, but part of it is like the studio literally was tampering with the vision, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, we saw that with Justice League. What happened there? Like, totally different vision got changed. Even like, you see some of the stuff about who's the director of the first Suicide Squad?
David Ayer?
David Ayer. Yeah, you see some of the stuff about the David Ayer cut, like him talking about that whole thing. So what did Warner tamper with his cut? Like, so you have those type of things of like, what was the director's like actual vision of the movie, and it's crazy. Like, it's so ironic. Like, Zack Snyder has this happen to him at Warner Brothers, and now like we're dealing with this like a few years later with Netflix now. And
man.
you know him probably personally, when he goes home, like when he went home after all this stuff to like his wife or something, he was probably like, man, it's happening again. But yeah, I think the thing is with, like I said, with him being in business with them and stuff, like this is probably going to get made, I would assume, just because, the numbers did well. And the thing is, love him or hate him, Zack Snyder, like he brings people into, like he puts butts in seats to watch his stuff, whether good, bad, or anywhere in between. Like, Zack Snyder, I don't know, he just makes his movies in a way where like people want to check him out either to enjoy him or like hate on him. But at the end of the day, like you said, Netflix is looking for viewership. They're not necessarily caring about good or bad reviews.
Oh yeah. Oh man. So there you have it. I think we'll leave it at that for at least this version. We'll see if we come back a year from now or whatever it could take.
Or in April, our follow up in April.
Oh yeah. We probably should do that. Actually, we should probably do that. You're right. Oh man. But yeah. So there you go. Let us know in the comment section down below or after the fact. What are your thoughts on Rebel Moon? Connections, things you liked about it, things you didn't like about it. How does it compare with some of your favorite aspects of Star Wars, spaceships, weapons, thematics, characters, locations? Let us know in the comment section down below. For me on this channel, I haven't even said it yet, but I'll say in the podcast, I started a blog. So I have starraptorwrites.substack.com. I have put up an origin story of where I came up with the name Starrapter. I also have a top 10 most anticipated games of 2024 ready for you guys to not listen to. I have to get used to saying read on over there, not watch, not listen, but to read over there on starraptor.substack.com. So yeah, I plan on regularly updating that. I'm just scratching that little creative itch for the year 2024, trying something new.
Yeah, hey, I mean, it's always a good thing to get into like the whole writing thing. I did that for a really, really long time, for like years and years, for hiking and outdoor gear. Actually, like I did that for probably like 6 years actually, of writing, 6 or 7 years of writing and reviewing things and all that stuff. Like, so, it's a rewarding thing to do. But the big thing is like consistency when it comes to that, because like, if you don't continually write or don't even have like a schedule, like, because like, that's what I did back in the day when I was doing all those reviews and things and like write-ups. I would have like a schedule. Like I would post an article like every Wednesday basically, and so people knew to come back and like tune into the website around then. So like that was always a thing that I did back in the day. But yeah, like writing is a good creative outlet, I feel like. And yeah, I mean, hey, people enjoy checking out interesting stuff.
Yeah, so go ahead, subscribe. You can subscribe there as well as you can on YouTube. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. We go live every Sunday night here on the Starraptor YouTube channel. Also, hit that bell icon. That way you'll definitely be notified when we go live. because apparently I scheduled this for yesterday at 8:05 p.m. So hopefully you guys weren't waiting around for a whole 24 hours just on the YouTube channel. But yeah, it is now the 7th apparently. Okay. But anyways, what are you going to be up to in the meantime, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be working out, finally back to working out after that little injury I had. So it's going to be exciting getting back into the swing of things tomorrow for working out and getting back on track with my diet and just like really kind of a restart to the new year for me. Like, cause last Monday I was kind of starting off the new year really well and then got hurt. And then, I just had to take all of last week off to just do nothing basically. So it's kind of like a wash. So now I'm just back to, my new year starts tomorrow basically. So it'll be a good time to get things going. And yeah, it should just be a nice time getting back into working out. And then this week I don't have much going on other than just the normal weekly stuff. No new Star Wars things. Maybe we get a bit of Star Wars news later in the week potentially.
Really hope.
I am gonna probably check out Echo though when it comes out, just because the trailers actually look good. I was very skeptical about the show when it was first announced. I was very skeptical to say the least, especially since they're dropping it all in one go. But now that I've seen like the trailers and stuff, it actually looks fine. So
I can't wait.
I'm gonna check that out, and yeah, that's about all I'm gonna do. Oh yeah, and then also to throw in here real quick, I know Milton mentioned that he really enjoyed Rebel Moon as well, like based on what he was saying in our chat. So that's something for maybe our listeners and viewers out there. Like if you're wanting to check it out, maybe check it out, because all three of us fairly enjoyed it for the most part. So, there's that. You can follow me on Twitter, or X now, talking sports and fitness and movies and everything else in between, at Real Ben Maynard. And you can follow me on Instagram at Real Ben Maynard. And then Milton, you can follow him on X at Milton Weber 7, and then Milton 7 Weber on Instagram, where he normally posts like his workouts and stuff. Actually, he's been posting those lately, I noticed. So yeah, you can find him there.
Yeah, we should be back to a normal time at 7 p.m. next week, along with Milton returning to the show. So stay tuned for that. So for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Starrapter, that's going to do it for the first episode into Books for Outer Rim Transmission 135. Thanks everybody for watching. May the Force be with you in transmission.